Today, we are reviewing Mound Builders. Mound Builders is a victory point game states of siege game, which means that you are basically trying to survive rounds and rounds of adverse conditions, whether you are a fantasy town in a medieval setting under siege, whether you're in the English Civil Wars as Parliament trying to survive whatever the crown is throwing at you, or, if you're in a zombie movie trying to defend the town of Farmingdale. But Mound Builders is a little different. Mound Builders is about the Cahokia people based in the Mississippi area, who were the mound building Indians. And this is a game that, unlike other states of siege games, which can cover days or months or weeks or years, this covers hundreds of years. This is a very interesting entry in the series. And, well, I'll give you my final thoughts after we cover the game. This won't be a coverage of all of the rules, but I hope to give you a very good and somewhat detailed idea of how the game plays. This map represents the Mississippi area where the Cahokia people were based. The heart of Cahokia is represented by this hexagonal piece, representing the palisades around the capital city. 5 warpaths lead to the heart of Cahokia, where eventually armies from neighboring tribes, the Cherokee, the Ho-Chunk, the Natchez, the Caddo, and the Shawnee will progress down to attack Cahokia. Your job is to survive as many turns as possible, including the eventual advent of the Spanish. Unlike other states of siege games, you set the initial parameters for the siege in the first phase, the Hopewell Era. In the Hopewell Era, you'll be establishing diplomatic ties to neighboring chiefdoms to eventually bolster your economy and establish defenses along each warpath. At least, that is the plan. Chiefdoms are represented by these tiles, which will be placed along the warpaths. Each chiefdom provides a type of good, and on the plains side has a number that indicates how difficult it is to establish diplomatic relations with them. The higher the number, the more difficult it is. Many chiefdoms can potentially revolt, but a few never will even if rolled to. That's represented by the green Birdman symbol. Chiefdoms you've befriended, you can introduce to your mound culture by building mounds on them. You pay their diplomatic cost in action points and flip them over. Mounded chiefdoms can defend against incoming armies. They rarely revolt, and they're better at bolstering your economy of trade goods. More on that in the Mississippian Era. At the beginning of the game, you only know of the chiefdoms directly around Cahokia. As you expand your empire by diplomacy, you'll discover more chiefdoms. While it can be tricky to establish your peace pipe on a warpath for the first time, once you have that peace pipe there, further diplomatic efforts are much easier. Instead of rolling strictly higher on one die, you can roll 2 dice and pick the best result. Let's take a look at the event cards you must survive and which drive the game. Every round you will draw an event card and resolve it. Each event card gives you action points, or APs, indicate if a tribal warpath has a revolt, indicate which tribes are in ascendancy or decline, and which tribal armies are advancing down their warpath to Cahokia. Later on, special black-titled cards indicate when the Spanish join in the fray and begin the final era, the Spanish Era. More on that later. In the Hopewell Era, only green-titled cards are used. They give you white-circled AP. You just get those action points straight up at the beginning of the round. Black-circled AP, which we'll see in later eras, only give you AP if your economy is at a high enough level. Revolts in the Hopewell Era mainly just result in your peace pipe retracting along the warpath, a diplomatic rather than a military setback, and it doesn't always happen. When you see a small downward pointing triangle in the color of a particular tribe, place the decline marker next to its warpath. All chiefdom numbers are decreased on that warpath, making both diplomacy and defense easier. Likewise, if you see an upward pointing arrow in a tribe's color, place the ascendancy marker next to the warpath. All chiefdom numbers on that warpath are increased, making diplomacy and defense more difficult. You can also reinforce the Cahokia Palisades, clicking them up one level for 2 action points per level. Lower numbers are better for defense purposes because to defend successfully, you need to roll strictly higher. Once the Hopewell cards run out, we start the Mississippian Era. At the beginning of the Mississippian Era, your empire is defined by where your peace pipes are along the warpaths, and if you mounded at least one chieftain on that warpath. If you don't have a mounded chiefdom on a warpath, you remove your peace pipe, if any. Then the tribal armies start next to your peace pipes, or next to Cahokia if you didn't manage to A. extend a peace pipe, and B. mount a chiefdom on that warpath. Yellow titled cards now appear, also with white circled AP points, but now showing a tribal symbol to indicate which tribal army advances on Cahokia. We now see gray titled cards, which only offer black circled APs, which are based on your economy. Subtract the AP number from your economy, and that's how many action points you have, down to a minimum of 1 emergency action point if you didn't manage to pull out. Trade goods are calculated counting the goods on the chiefdom tiles still available on the board, even if they're under enemy control. If a chiefdom producing a good is mounded, that good type is counted towards your economy. In this case, hides would be counted as a trade good. If a trade good has no mounded chiefdom, it must be present on 2 plains chiefdoms in order to count as a trade goods type, such as shirt in this case. Additionally, there are 2 unique goods, seashells and obsidian, that, if mounded, can give you access to additional benefits. Seashells allow you to save 2 action points instead of 1 from round to round, while obsidian allows you to embrace the buzzard cult and not suffer the ill effects of rolling critical failures or 1s in defense or attack. Every turn, you might be able to increase your trade goods by colonizing reconquered chiefdoms, but it's more likely as turns go by and you lose footholds on the warpaths that your economy goes down as chiefdoms are removed from the board and you lose trade goods. When a tribal army advances, they either remove the peace pipe on their path, delaying movement forwards, or they attempt to move 1 space directly forwards. You might be able to stop that movement by defending with a mounded chieftain in their way. Roll strictly higher than the number on the mound, and you've stopped them. Critical failures do result in the mound being destroyed on top of being conquered, however. You can push an army back by rolling strictly higher than that army standee's strength. In case of the Cherokee, roll higher than a 2. If an army actually reaches Cahokia, you need to roll higher than Cahokia's current defense number to successfully defend. If you fail the roll, click down the palisades to a weaker position. If you're at the last click position and attacked, or you roll a critical failure defending Cahokia and haven't embraced the buzzard cult, the palisades are breached. And when an army attacks a breached palisade, it's all over. During this era, you use the Great Sun Leader to establish diplomatic ties. It's the only way to get peace pipes onto warpaths at this point. The Spanish era draws near when you draw the event card Cusa, which heralds the coming of the Spanish. The Spanish leader is decided from a possible set of 3 depending on your economy level at that point. The better the economy, the harder the pool of 3 leaders is. Then, one day, the Spanish finally come. The Spanish are represented by a yellow army marker and a randomly selected leader from the 3 leaders decided in the pool. This leader determines the strength of the Spanish army. The Spanish army then starts in the homeland of a randomly selected tribe. When the Spanish event is resolved, the Spanish keep pressing towards Cahokia during the same turn, unless you defeat them. You get an emergency action point each time they advance to spend on attacking them or attacking elsewhere, but it must be used to attack someone. Wherever you manage to stop them on that warpath becomes the limit of your future action points. In other words, if we stop the Spanish army in Bynum, number 3, that's where the smallpox marker goes on the action track, and now we can't have more actions than that marker. It's important to keep the Spanish as far away as possible. The Spanish event card isn't done with you yet. It's shuffled into the last cards of the deck, and you play the rest of the game as normal until you reveal the Spanish again. Then the Spanish advance again until you stop them, and if you manage to stop them and Cahokia has not fallen to them or another tribe, you win the game. And even if you didn't win, you can still get a score for the game to see how well you did, relatively speaking. Mound Builders is deceptively small, by which I mean physically it is in a physically small box. Its rating says that its complexity is 4. And so it sort of makes you think, oh, so this is going to be like a gateway States of Siege game, right? Which is like, no, it is not a gateway States of Siege game. However, here's what I understand from States of Siege games. They are generally based around a siege that lasts anywhere from a few days to maybe a few years, or a decade, perhaps. But Mound Builders is different. It spans hundreds of years, 1,400 to 2,000 years, all in one game. I know a name for a game like that, don't you? That's called a civilization game. So Mound Builders is a marriage between something that is shorter term, a state of siege, and something longer term, a civilization game, which is, I think, a really fascinating mix. Because it's a civilization game, you've got these multiple eras, and if you don't treat each era the way it should be treated, and you don't treat each era as actually inherently building on top of the previous one, you're going to fail, because this is ultimately a civilization game. So I hope that my review has given you an understanding of the structure of this civilization / States of Siege game, which is still really a strange combination in my head, because it's like short term, long term, meshed together. So I really do appreciate this design. Don't believe anybody who tells you that the warpaths are all the same, because you actually go through the cards and go through which warpaths go into revolt, which warpaths are in ascension and dissension, and how often. Like the Ho-Chunk in your Hopewell Era, they never go in decline. They are really powerful enemies. So you need to determine what to do about them. How frequently are the tribes inclined to attack? You know, this is all important information that you need to sort of either get from an experimental, empirical point of view, or to actually just go through the card mix and go, oh, so it's like that. You know, you gotta, so the warpaths it's not all in your head, they all act differently. I really do enjoy this game. I really want to get to know this game more. I feel like there's a lot of depth there. There's so many things that you can do, like especially in the advanced game. I definitely encourage, and I almost want to say that I think that you should try to push ahead into the advanced game as soon as possible, if not from the very start, while understanding that this is a more complex game than it appears, and definitely the complexity rating is higher than what is stated on the box. Now, I think there's some game guides on Board Game Geek, little player aids, and I think with my review mapping out the important points of each era, I think with those in hand you can read the rules and get into the advanced rules straight off and just go into the whole using the Great Sun, dealing with the Black Tortoise type stuff. Going buzzard is especially an important point to consider because critical failures do happen quite a bit. So there's a lot of strategic depth to be found in Mound Builders. I find it quite fascinating. Will I keep it? Yes, I am keeping it. I don't know how long I'll keep it, but I don't see letting go of it for at least several years, if ever. It is indeed one of the better small civilization games that I have. It sets up quickly, it's a really thinky experience, and yet it is not a horribly long game. So if there's ever anything that you can describe as a true civilization, as a true light civilization game that actually still packs a punch in your cerebrum, Mound Builders is the game for you. Yeah, I think this is a great game, and I highly recommend it.